welcome to East Update Interaction on redefining urban infrastructure and addressing new age challenges. As cities grow and India strives to accommodate its burgeoning population with the promise of a good life, it is essential to look at how it can be actually achieved. Apart from the social and political will, it will be necessary to revamp the existing urban infrastructure which stands today. This means we'll have more satellite townships and also suburbs will turn into new cities. In redefining the fabric of the existing urban infrastructure, a number of issues, right from sustainability to access to transportation, smart cities, and beyond, a number of issues will have to be looked at. On this note, we have come together today to witness an engaging interactive session on redefining urban infrastructure and addressing new age challenges. Our panelists will dwell and enlighten our audience on the challenges and solutions for the new age urban infrastructure, which will become a part of our built environment in times to come. Ladies and gentlemen, the distinguished speakers for today's interaction are Shruti Purohit, architect and urban planner, director and founder of Nine Squares Architects; Arijit Sen, urban planner, Modon Properties based in the UAE; Jinal Saola, urban strategist and a principal consultant who's working with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India; and Nilesh Gandhi from Meta Design Architects based in Mumbai. So, delegates, get ready to witness a high voltage session on redefining urban infrastructure and addressing new age challenges. To begin this interaction, I would now like to welcome Ms. Shruti Purohit. In the existing as also the new age urban infrastructure, the role and limitations of built and unbuilt spaces is a key concern area, and Ms. Shruti will talk more about it. Ms. Shruti Purohit is the director and founder of Nine Squares Architects Indore. She is also an urban planner and interior designer with a work experience of over 25 years. She graduated with a master's degree from SPA Delhi and a bachelor's of architecture degree from MANIT Bhopal. Her work portfolio has a diverse range of projects, some of which include the 4-star Griha certified Atulya IT Park and public RAM projects like the placemaking of 56 Dukan area. A recipient of the Times of India Award and Ultratech Award, many of Shruti's work have been published by leading architectural magazines. So let's welcome Shruti Purohit.
Basically, we are into projects of urban renewal, buildings definitely of various types, that is residential, commercial, institutional, restoration, redevelopment, as well as interior designing projects. Looking at the very specific topic today of urban infrastructures, its limitations, and the very specific topic that I am going to talk about is about the roles and limitations of built and unbuilt spaces. So some of the projects that I have picked for today's presentation is the recently done project, which is placemaking of Chappan. Chappan is basically a food street hub, you can say, which has been identified as clean street food hub also. So this is located in a very, very prime location of Indore, which is adjacent to MG Road and the main, you can say, the new city area of Indore, which is quite densely populated as well. And Indore has been very well known for some of the things. One is the Indori love for food of all kinds and variety, and there are many such food hubs which have eventually developed over the years. So this is a place which has been very frequented by especially youngsters and of course all age groups. And since this is very, situated in a very prime location, it had its own issues, problems. So you can see this is the MG Road and this is the Chappan Street. This is how it looked like just before this transformation happened. So there were shops, there was traffic, there were people, there was a lot of chaos, and everything looked very unorganized. But the love for food brought people over here, and uh, people really even then didn't mind going here, even in hot summer or rainy season, or for that matter, pleasant winters. But with this intervention, as we understand that urban infrastructure consists of many aspects. So, if I talk about the main issues which have been there in our urban cities, we need to look at the planning aspect right from regional level, city level, and area level as such. And after, when we look at the area level planning, we can address such transformations like placemaking and something similar of this scale. We also have to think about the transportation infrastructure, which has to be very, very inclusive of improved walkability and parking provisions, which becomes a major issue. Then, of course, the sewage, drainage, water supply, and power distribution is a very big challenge. Solid waste management is definitely very important, and we are lucky. Like, I am lucky to be in Indore, which has been, 5 times rated as the cleanest city of India by its very strong will, determination, and of course, cooperation from the people. So, this is where the public participation has taken a major lead, apart from a very strong administrative will. Of course, housing and especially affordable housing is a very important segment. And not to miss out the social infrastructure part, which talks about parks, playgrounds, and leisure spaces. So this Chappan is kind of a small example of upgrading the social infrastructure, the leisure spaces, or the place for people which, totally miss out from the urban landscape that we see in today's city. And not to miss the preservation of our heritage premises, various buildings which have been built maybe thousands of years ago or hundreds of years ago. While addressing these issues, what can we as architects, planners do about it? Not everybody is a planner, not everybody is a policy maker, but our small efforts can really bring in that change. What we say, boon boon se ghat bharta hai, ghat se fir sagar bharta hai. So similarly, looking at it, if we do, we do small pilot projects, we showcase some such examples, then definitely this change will happen at a very, very large level. So looking at this Chappan street, which you can see what was the level of chaos here, and this is what it is within a remarkable timeline execution within 56 days. It was a very random thing. The administration decided, okay, let's do, because it has been popular with the name Chappan, because there are 56 shops here, and you can see the counting of shops also has been done. Usko Hindi or English mein likha hai to make it so that people can connect to it better. And this is what the place has become. So this is the place for people, for the food lovers, and especially, don't we think we are tired of going to malls and things like that? So people need some space where they can simply go, relax, chill, chat, and of course have food of their liking. So the issues which were there, it was highly chaotic. There was issue of haphazard parking. There was no sense of place. The amenities were extremely poor, and now this because of this intervention, this chaos has brought in order. The haphazard parking has been resolved, and it is thoroughly a pedestrian street now, and with proper provision for two-wheelers and four-wheelers at different points. The sense of place was totally missing, and now this becomes a place-making project which has been talked about all over the nation, and all the amenities have been really planned here. So we identified the issues which I shared just now. So this was a place which, the street scenario, if we look at it like this, it was a place for eat, work, shop, and with haphazard traffic, which eventually got converted into a place after this placemaking exercise as eat, work, shop, art, green, barrier-free, and social gathering space. So people come here not alone for eating, for working, for shopping. They also come here now for that social interaction. Now you can see events happening like Indore is very rich in its food, in its culture as well. People are very enthusiastic here, and I'm lucky to be have dealt this project. So people come here for various occasions like 15th August or the Republic Day ceremony, and it is very well celebrated. So we have also identified a place where flag hoisting happens. So and then there are artists who are like we see in European countries. The urban plazas give that opportunity, that platform to people who can showcase their artwork. They can make their paintings or maybe do some magic tricks and whatever. So this has become that quality of space which in India or Indore is missing in its urban landscape. And of course, not to miss, this is also a barrier-free place where we have where we have ensured that textiles and such things have been taken care of. So it is about well-being of this place, and the process which we adapted. Of course, we had like initial stakeholder meeting with whom we in detail identified the issues, and we gave this concept design proposal. We incorporated the feedback also, and there was again review meeting. So this is the steps that we followed, and this was the layout which we worked out. It had beautiful flooring pattern. It had all the amenities, how the traffic is going to move and where it is going to get stopped, the flag hoisting space here. And we introduced a lot of green area here, a lot of plants were introduced so that it becomes very soothing, especially in summer months. And because we experience hardly 2-3 months winters here. So this is that pedestrian plaza which involved all these activities here. It eventually becomes a green place, a cultural plaza, and it has eased off congestion issues. And in COVID times, especially where social distancing becomes a big norm. So that has been very well taken care of, because now there are entry points and exit points, and it can be the crowd can be managed, can be controlled, that sanitization can happen. So I think it happened at a very right time. This was kind of informally inaugurated just before lockdown. So these are some of the images of this area. You can see these benches, trees. The tree has been given a character. I mean, tree gives a character to the place, but somewhere down the line, we start disrespecting or de-evaluating the importance of tree. And this is how the old trees were really brought into the picture of it. Then it also has some lighting effects and all, which is as per the festival or the occasion. So this is all about Chappan. And quickly, I will talk about a project which we did for restoration. And as I was mentioning, the urban infrastructure issues, that we have to take care of preservation of our heritage. So this is again the most congested and the oldest part of Indore, which is Rajwada here. This is the Rajwada building, Rajwada Chowk. And this is each street has been categorized here with the name of activities like Sarai Sarafa or Ada Bazaar or Bartan Bazaar, likewise. And this is where Sri Bake Bihari temple existed. And this is how it looked, before restoration. So with our interventions in terms of, the site premises, this is how it looks now. It has like, the it is like reliving the past, which I mean, this was constructed almost 250 years ago. And these are the small interventions which Indore Smart City and Indore Nagar Nigam is doing. It has created Heritage Walk here, which is like tying all these small projects of restoration and giving the culture back to its people, which was literally lost. Then I also have one few more things to share here for. So this is again a similar project, Durga Devi Mandir. This is also 250 years old, and this is also existing in this Rajwada vicinity. And this 240-year-old legacy was saved from, this is how it looked like. It had no character. It was lost among all commercial activities. And with this intervention, even the area surrounded, I mean, the campus area was developed. The facade got very clean. People could start identifying more than the religious, aspect to it. As a cultural aspect, also, it got that value from the people. It had beautiful carving, which was brought back. So when we are talking about restoration process, I mean, these are the steps that we followed, and this beautiful heritage was brought back here. I would also like to share another example that I would like to talk about here is sustainability, example of sustainability. This Griha certified 4-star building is Atul IT Park here in Indore. So this is another intervention which has how do we deal with problems of urban infrastructure. So we as architects, planners, if we are very sensitive in our design and our ideas and can come up with buildings which are zero liquid discharge, which have provisions like STP, rainwater harvesting, solar electricity, barrier free design. So definitely the load on our existing urban infrastructure would be less. We'll be choking the lines in much less way, and we'll be creating a really sustainable, and will be able to contribute to our environment, which is in a more sustainable way. So this is all from my side.
After having understood the role of built and unbuilt spaces in new age urban infrastructure, we now move on to another area, and that is access to urban infrastructure. To talk more about how to create access in urban infrastructure which will govern our lives, I would now like to invite our next speaker, Arijit Sen. Arijit Sen is an urban planner and architect with over 10 years of professional experience in India, UAE, USA, and Finland. He has worked with leading design and development offices such as Modon Properties Abu Dhabi, Urban Planning Council, KEO Insight, and HCP Design Planning and Management on township master plans, public dream design, and city level strategic master plans. He has a master's degree in city planning from University of California, Berkeley, and a bachelor's of architecture from Kriva, Mumbai. And he believes in using site sensitive, pragmatic, and common sense approach to design. So let's welcome Arijit Sen.
I'm going to talk about how to make urban infrastructure accessible. To do that, I'll give a brief evolution of urban infrastructure, talk about what I mean by access to urban infrastructure, how accessible is urban infrastructure in India, what are the current trends, and how can we as architects, urban designers enhance and create this access. The distinction between designing a city and infrastructure is a recent phenomenon. Right from Indus Valley civilization, the Nabatean kingdom in Petra, to our fourth cities in India, designing infrastructure systems has been integrated within the city's architecture design. However, with industrial revolution and creation of excessive waste, pollution, and unlivable conditions, infrastructure systems have started being separated from any direct experience of the city. Move all drainage underground, shift noisy trains underground or away from the cities, construct roads and highways to separate noisy, polluted city centers from calm residential neighborhoods, create suburbia. Large service tunnels were created, streets were green. Urban infrastructure was perceived as an unglamorous technical requirement of a city that should be tucked away from people's eyes. Infrastructure became an extremely technical, rational component of the city that was dealt with by selected few specialists. Residents needed permits, applications, requests to be able to gain access to or engage with this infrastructure. Meanwhile, architects have envisioned cities where infrastructure and architecture function as one. Whether they are large megastructures or integrated townships created on energy generation, the focus has been on revealing or glorifying or providing access to all the components that make a city. There are numerous technological ideas and solutions for designing efficient infrastructural systems and components. But how many of them are truly accessible to the users or beneficiaries? And how can we work towards making them more accessible? I see access in four aspects. Physical, these are components of infrastructure where we experience them daily on a direct basis. The footpaths, signages, parks, waterfronts, street furniture, lights. We see them, we use them, we criticize them, and then we leave them. How engaging is the process of designing these systems? There are guidebooks and engineering regulations that mandate certain widths necessary for people, vehicles, and cycles. However, there isn't much direct engagement with the users of the area, nor a human-centric demand assessment. Transit stops are other examples of physical access. Bus stops are designed considering certain ergonomics, accessibility, compliances. However, in the wider scale of planning, the relationship with the surrounding neighborhoods leaves much to be desired. Second is visual access. Here I pick utilities because they are invisible infrastructure systems of the city. From large, deep service tunnels, the world has now shifted to efficient underground utility corridors. However, in the design and implementation of these, efficiency and ease of maintenance by individual municipal departments takes precedence. For example, in this case, the utilities could very well have been stacked one on top of the other, thereby reducing the clutter underground and allowing the street width to reduce from 26 meters to half. This is what is proposed for a 2-lane street inside residential communities. In this case, who is more important, the user or the municipality? Geographic resources are another infrastructure element of the city that gets hidden. Even though these are probably easiest to see, they're quite inaccessible. Security, protection, preservation become the reasons. However, it is the lack of awareness that usually results in them getting neglected. This is an example of a mangrove walk in Abu Dhabi. Simple, low-impact design to make people aware of the wonderful natural resource in the city. In so many Indian cities, such natural resources, instead of being celebrated and learned from, are neglected and restricted from access. The third is social access to infrastructure. This consists of ways by which citizens engage with cities' infrastructure as a society and make it their own. However, even these to take place, they have to go through many permissions, requests, and even activism to make municipalities finally relent. Once they have been given access, it has fostered a wonderful synergy between the public and the city. Occasionally, there are events where residents or the public are given the opportunity to participate in the design and decision-making process as key stakeholders. We need a lot more of this. The last aspect I look at is technical access. I see technical as the formal process of engaging with infrastructure. There are bids and tenders floated by the government. However, the manner in which they're drafted becomes quite apparent that the focus is only on a selected few group of specialists. This immediately disconnects people's access to the infrastructure design process. Having said that, open competitions have started taking place more frequently. With greater budgets being allocated for infrastructure projects, some organizations involved are entering into a more open form of design process. This is very promising for the future. So how accessible is urban infrastructure in India right now? Today, innovative methods have opened up for designers and public to participate in. Tactical urbanism is one such concept. This is an intervention in Rohtak, whereby studying circulation patterns and engaging with traffic police and citizens, a better traffic management process was developed, a bottom-up solution to a top-down problem. And recently, some design competitions have been floated for free or at a nominal charge for designing infrastructural systems like the streets in Mumbai. And then, of course, making available guidebooks and regulations to explain the rationale and set standards for infrastructure designs. These are indeed some promising ways by which infrastructure can be made accessible to the users. What more can we as architects, urban designers, planners do to enhance and enable and create this access? We need to engage directly, make design of infrastructure systems an integral part of architecture design process. Our role should extend above, below, and beyond the plot boundary. Translate and clarify. The language of infrastructure is extremely technical, based on math, physics, and chemistry. We need to step in and become the translators, not only for the layperson to understand, but to simplify and clarify the many unnecessary complexities. Decentralize urban infrastructure. Making infrastructure an everyone responsibility would not only empower the users, but also create a sense of ownership, stepping away from the convenient blame games. And technically as well, it would share the load and create new placemaking opportunities, like we just saw the fantastic example by Shruti. And humanize urban infrastructure. Finally, the more accessible that urban infrastructure gets, the more livable a city becomes. Cities should not be planned to comply with statistical equations. Instead, they should be planned to aid and support people, their unique personalities, mannerisms, and reflect their proclivities and culture.
In the new age urban infrastructure, changing climate, rising inequalities, and emerging technologies will have a big role to play. And it is equally important to understand their impact in redefining the new age urban infrastructure. To talk more on this topic, I would now like to call upon Jeenil Saula. Jeenil Saula is an urban planner currently working as a principal consultant to the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, where Genial co-leads a team to transform civic governance in India by leveraging data and technology. Prior to this, she has been working on integrated urban development projects that build resilience and equity in India, United States, Switzerland, and Costa Rica. She has a bachelor's in architecture from Kamla Raheja Institute of Architecture and a master's in urban planning from Harvard University. So let's welcome Geenal Saula.
I won't show projects, but I'll attempt to stitch together thoughts on why we need to readapt urban infrastructure, what that means, and also offer ideas on how we might do so. Globally, we are faced with three major trends: changing climate and rise in extreme weather events, rising inequalities, and emerging technologies with the fourth industrial revolution. Cities form 2% of the total land mass and contribute about 70% of the carbon emissions. 90% of the world's urban areas are situated on coastal areas, which puts them at risk of sea level rise, coastal storms, along with periods of droughts and heat waves. And we've seen all of these in the most recent past in the Chennai city itself. It's important to focus not at the, and therefore it's important to focus at the scale of city, because it is really the place where a lot of climate adaptation and mitigation for climate action is possible. But it's not just important to focus on the city level, but it's also important to take climate action at the parcel level. Multilateral organizations like Asian Development Bank require climate risk and vulnerability assessments to be conducted for their investment sites. Within the design and planning communities as well, instruments such as at the parcel level, such as zoning, development codes, construction techniques, choice of materials, treatment of water and waste, and types of vegetation we can grow, are all tools available for us to effect climate action at the parcel level. Ecological infrastructure and the way we manage water is going to be extremely essential in India as we deal with climate action. We can look at some of the examples from global best practices. Chinese cities have adopted a sponge city manifesto to promote ecological infrastructure and make cities much more porous. The Netherlands has also set aside roughly 1 billion euros per year for the Delta program. Here they develop new ways to manage water, redesigning lakes, garages, parks, all of these to act as reservoirs to be able to store water and slow its flow down in the case water rises. Within the transport sector, we're seeing cities across the world, especially after COVID, improve non-motorized transit. The ministry itself has undertaken two big campaigns nationwide, which is the Cycles for Change Challenge as well as the Streets for People Challenge, where we're improving biking and walkabilities in cities. Uh, Climate change is also amplifying extreme weather displacements and blurring the distinctions between who is an economic migrant, an environmental migrant, and a political refugee. The sheer millions that are going to be displaced in the coming decades and the limits of receiving territories to be able to absorb climate migrants, it means that it's much more feasible to do climate proofing in societies in situ. So governments and businesses are going to have to do much more actively to make this just transition. In South Africa, an organization called Just Transition is actually working with workers and their unions and employers and governments and communities to provide better jobs, training, and social protection for workers who are affected by global warming and climate change policies. Governments, are, Governments play a very crucial role in stimulating markets for for climate positive innovation. In the United States, we've seen under the Obama administration about $800 billion being spent on a climate change stimulus package. This has really helped bring down the cost of solar as well as charging. But we're also seeing grassroots mobilizations when governments don't show leadership. When the US withdrew from the Paris Climate Change Agreement, we saw a loose federation of about 2,000 cities and universities that came together to commit to climate action under the name We're Still In. We also saw global climate strike through organized by the youth. And all of this gives much reason for hope. With the fourth industrial revolution, we're seeing many emerging technologies flood the market: AI, ML, blockchain, advanced materials, 3D printing, drones, and so on. While these have opened up immense possibilities for our cities to solve problems in innovative ways, it's important to recognize that technology is merely an additive, it's an enabler, and should not be deployed for the sake of it. For example, if the city wants to improve bus transit, it it is very important that the city map where the demand is, where the demand is, what is the size of the demand, what are the best possible bus routes, how does it connect with other modes of transport, and then on top of that, build in the technology layer, which is essentially create mobile apps so that users are able to track when the bus is coming, where it is, what is the capacity available in the bus, and so on. And thus, when we're able to build both on the built infrastructure as well as the digital infrastructure, we're going to be able to use adoption of public transport as well as the user experience. And that's something to keep in mind, not just for transport, but even when we, for example, think about flood mitigation strategies. But it's important to first think about the blue-green infrastructure that we're putting in place. And on top of that, building the sensors that are going to be able to function, your early warning systems, and so on. During the pandemic, we saw the integrated command and control centers of the smart cities being purposed as COVID war rooms. 5 years ago, when the integrated command and control centers were set up, it seemed like sci-fi delusions, and I myself was extremely critical of these. But during COVID, we saw that cities like Surat and Varanasi, they were able to use their ICCCs to track cases, to monitor lockdowns, as well as make sure that food is being delivered, as well as medical supplies are being delivered to households. We saw also in cities like Ujjain in Madhya Pradesh, where ICCCs were used to coordinate medical supplies through mobile medical units and rapid response teams. In many cities like Prayagraj and Bengaluru, we saw ICCCs were used to set up 24 by 7 COVID helplines. However, technologies are evolving very quickly, and we also have to be cautious about designing them, procuring them, and deploying them. But we're also going to have to build in enough flexibility to be so that they're able to adopt to these kind of evolving technologies. Within the ministry itself, we recognize what the combinatorial power of data as well as emerging technology can do for cities. We're trying to institutionalize data-driven decision making within urban local bodies. So we've appointed 100 city data officers in each of the 100 smart cities, and we are building their capacities to be able to collect data, analyze data, collate data, and use them for decision making. We're conducting a series of assessments, we're conducting training programs for these, and this will take a lot of hard work. And I don't think we'll see significant results for the past 10 years. But the process of change is slow, of course, and extremely painstaking. While we're working with city data officers, we're also working with them to create city data policies, open data policies, and beyond that, also issues on privacy assessment, cyber accountability, accessibility within ICT, that is, people for those who are disabled by vision or disabled by or differently abled in terms of speech impediments or hearing impediments. We're also working at the national scale to create certain digital public goods that can be used for data sharing, for secure data sharing, create national data banks on urban issues and so on. In conclusion, I'll offer a 4P framework to think about how we can shape our cities: people, places, political representatives, and public officials. We need to keep people at the center of what we do, keeping in mind the three trends that we design and plan for places. And we need to work towards creating greater buy-in with political representatives and public officials while we continue to build their capacities. One of the biggest takeaways for me in working with both the Pune Municipal Corporation and now with the ministry, and I'll paraphrase my boss, Joint Secretary Kunal Kumar, in saying that we very mistakenly think that high capacity is a precondition for organizations to be successful. But in fact, it is solving problems successfully day after day that we build organizational capacity. We're flooded with several systemic issues, but systemic issues may not always be solved by systemic solutions. So we need to think about tactical, agile, and smaller proof of ideas to build momentum and gather buy-in.
Redefining urban infrastructure is not an easy task, more so because of the challenges involved. It requires a proper symbiosis between architects, town planners, smart city experts, heritage and restoration specialists, as also green and sustainable architecture. The intricacies and challenges involved, as also the possible resolutions, is up for discussion now. Janil, can you just elucidate on some of the core challenges when it comes to redefining urban infrastructure?
I think within the sort of broader three wide challenges that we're confronted with of changing climate, extreme weather events, growing inequalities, as well as emerging technology, I think the challenge of how we sort of confront this, for me, from my perspective at the moment, is from the government's perspective, uh, how we're able to sort of build capacities as well as build planning tools, design tools. We don't really actually have urban planners in most of our cities. We don't have urban designers. They're not even accredited degrees in India. And so building institutional capacities to be able to deal all of this upfront and decentralize this sort of work at the city level. Cities don't, we've not fully been able to decentralize, not operationalize the 74th Amendment. Uh, and this sort of perpetuates itself. We think that cities have very poor capacity and they're not able to go in to meet the challenges that are rising. And so, we then don't offer a lot of the municipal functions. We don't devolve powers to them, and the powers get centralized at the state and the national level. And sort of it's a self-fulfilling cycle in itself. And so really sort of decentralizing powers, getting local governments to really function as governments, just the way at the state and national level you have a ministry for housing, or you have a ministry for environment, you have a ministry for commerce. You need some of these local representatives and these capacities to build in at the city level. So fully devolving power to cities to be able to control their budgets, to be able to plan at the local level is very, very important. And this is not something new. I think this is a debate that's been going on for decades now. And and so what are sort of strategic ways to do that? And hence some of these things that Shruti is doing, some of these things that Arijit also talked about through campaigns that we're organizing at the ministry are agile ways. Like I said, a lot of systemic problems we may not be able to handle in a systemic way, but we have to sort of move around, find tactical ways to show proof of idea and to build momentum and get political buy-in.
Yeah, so you pointed out about the decentralization aspect. Can you also look at how private participation is enhancing our smart city movement?
I think smart cities really fully recognizes in the past 2 years, I can't speak for it before that, but in the past 2 years, it fully recognizes the role that the private sector and not just the private sector, but also governments, academia, civil society plays. Some of the things that the organization is doing, and I'll speak from the point of view of emerging technologies. Uh, we're setting up a platform called Solutions Registry. It's I think now changed and it's called City Innovation Exchange, where we're going to be able to connect solution providers with solution seekers, the governments, local governments, state governments, national governments, the problems that they're confronted with, they might be able to elucidate that on these portals. And organizations, individuals, like a lot of ourselves, will, if we have ideas, if we have solutions, we'll be able to provide those. And so that it's kind of a matchmaking exercise. And also sort of instilling much more participatory ways of planning and designing at the local levels with the campaigns that we're conducting right now, Nurturing Neighborhoods Challenge, Cycles for Change, Streets for People. I think all of these are ways for which private sector organizations, civil society is able to come in.
Like Gina pointed out, decentralization is one of the main things. And access, like my whole presentation was about getting access to urban infrastructure. Infrastructure somehow has become this huge, expensive or high cost, high value thing which all our cities have. And then and then the government has these tenders or bids that come out. And then if you read the bids, if you read who's going to apply to make a new railway station or a new metro station or a new road, you cannot, as a designer, you cannot really get access to it because it kind of really kind of narrows it down to certain companies, certain engineering firms who have this experience of having already built so many stations before. And then suddenly it just kind of changes the whole track of how the design is going to happen and falls into the same old style of design and infrastructure development. Somehow decentralizing the process, giving it, breaking a larger project into smaller packets and getting more people involved. That would sort of start getting more people interested, getting more, the not only the professionals, but also the citizens involved in what is happening in the cities, in the towns. You give a metro station design project to one architect to design all the 50 metro stations in the city, and then it just goes for a toss, suddenly the scale shifts. So I think that level of decentralization is essential, is important, and that is something in other countries where I've, like in Finland when I was there, in the US as well, California, there's a very federal method of doing work. So you kind of break it out into the different cities, the governments, and give them the power to do the designs themselves, and then they open it up. The US, actually the US and Finland both are very democratic in that process. If there's a big infrastructure project coming in, the citizens get involved. There is discussion, there are public participatory meetings happening, they give their views, and then based on that, the design comes up. Once the design comes up, even then they have more more participation coming in for the design itself. Yes, that can prolong the project, but it will bring in very valuable inputs. And once that gets built, everyone who's been part of the process takes ownership. And that eventually helps out, in long term, in terms of maintenance, in terms of pride, in terms of cultural development of the city. So it sort of works together. When we had this top-down approach where there is, which is what used to be happening in India, but now I think things are changing with tactical urbanism coming in, with companies like the WRI coming in and setting up these small interventions and working with the authorities and officials and the people. There is opportunity, but that needs to happen more, and maybe it can be formalized in many more open project processes that can happen.
In the post-colonial era, India witnessed growth in metro cities, even though we were not independent. Earlier, there were metro cities which came into existence. Now, after we gained independence, yes, the growth was seen in these metro cities, but not much in the number of metro cities. So, how is it impacting the growth of urban infrastructure today?
Yeah, so I mean, as we have been discussing about decentralization, which is again a keyword to this whole process, we are not able to distribute our, distribution of everything is required. Whether, I mean, we are talking about regional level plans, we are talking about city level plans and area level of plans. But until this regional plan preparation of that plan and its execution happens properly, the decentralization of urbanization, or I mean, we are going on loading on all the existing metro cities would keep on happening. And eventually what is happening, that the quality of life which is deserved by a resident, an urban resident, it is lost. And it is very important that we offer them a clean and sustainable environment, wherein you have smart solutions in the domain of sanitation, whether we talk about waste management, public transport, or for that matter anything concerning it. So it gets very important that these aspects are handled very efficiently right from the regional plan level, so that the smaller cities or towns which have the potential to grow can actually grow, and that trickle down effect can happen. It can further lead to the rural areas, and the migration which is happening from rural area to urban area is kind of controlled. We cannot deny that this migration would not happen, and we have seen in this COVID times that there was a big uh, chaos happened due to this. People moved back, they again tried coming back. So this all this chaos has to be the moment we have in rural areas or in smaller towns, or in I can say the places which are connected by these rural areas and smaller towns, can generate some industry which is more agriculture based. People would get their employment. And similar, I mean, we never talk about rural area planning, we only talk about urban area planning. So the moment we have a balance in our proposals, definitely people would like to, and people are understanding the quality of life, what it matters, especially in COVID times. If you are living in a very tiny apartment in metro cities, what is that quality which you are experiencing, especially in tough times like COVID? You feel like going back to your native place. You want to breathe in natural air, and you want to have that liberty in the kind of restrictions you are going through in urban areas. Those are to be those would be really addressed when we have enough opportunities created in smaller towns, created in rural areas. And there are kind of, we always talk about satellite towns uh, in urban areas. We can also have kind of satellite towns which are surrounding the rural areas, which have like good potential. If a certain village or the rural area has something to do with cotton, as their main crop, so maybe a cotton industry or something similar can happen there. In fact, I was reading a few days ago, and there was something which said that they are going to engage a lot of people in garment factories. So it is giving them enough employment generation, and likewise all the infrastructure is developed. So we also need to talk about infrastructure in rural areas, and we have to ensure that our rural areas don't become like urban areas, which are chaotic, which have lost their character. And when you pass by these rural areas these days, you see that it is again polluted with all the graphics. Even the rural areas are losing out their on their character, and the way they were building their houses, their settlement. So all that needs to be preserved, and that is when the load would on urban infrastructure would also be kind of controlled, and the rural areas can also grow hand in hand.
If we look at the population trends, if we follow the census from 1991 onwards, we see that the majority of population growth has not happened. Majority of urbanization since 1991 has not happened because of rural to urban migration. It's happened because rural areas have urbanized. We call this in situ urbanization. So it's rural areas where have expanded, that have grown, and that have become urban in nature. So nearly 30 to 40% of urbanization since 1991 is because of this in situ translation of rural areas to urban areas. And and so rural to urban migration is not as much since 1991. And so it's very important for us to think about value chains, not just to think in the binaries of urban and rural, but to think about value chains of goods and processes and people, and think about how to strengthen those value chains. And when I say value chains, if when we're talking about the garment industry, think about what is the value chain of the garment industry, where is the cotton produced, and where is it finally shipped off. There are lots of towns and people in the middle, and so that is where we need to focus our attention on. It's these in situ development, these census towns, these smaller towns, these middle-sized towns is where a lot of development needs to focus on. And I just want to say that uh, as update magazine, you have a lot of voice, and you're able to influence a lot of what your readers think. And so it would be good if you could also focus not on capturing what satellite towns are doing so much and the need for satellite towns. I think that is absolutely not the trajectory we should be following, but talk about what is happening in mid-sized towns and smaller towns and the infrastructure demands that they have there, and push sort of the industry to sort of cater to those.
And how do you
Right.
look at restoring these water resources and developing it as one, along with urban development?
So, Prasad, one challenge which we face with water is that it is very cheaply priced. So, when a commodity as critical and as important as water is priced so filthy cheap, it tends to invite itself to be abused. That's exactly what is happening with water. If I get to drink water at 20 rupees a liter, and if I get 10,000 liters of a tanker at 1,200 rupees, then while with the fact that yes, it is such a critical resource. So water, of course, as they say, the world war is going to be fought on water, and we have seen stories of Cape Town, wherein we had 0 day in Cape Town lately. So water will have its importance, and the focus will be on safeguarding and precious commodity if it has to be a people movement. And supplies is, and this is true for every case when we say sustainability. And I would just like to draw attention or extend Arjit's point of access to urban infra. This urban infra is for whom? It is for the people. And urban infrastructure will only sustain and be good if it is being taken care of the people. So, stakeholder engagement and the infra which is created by the people, taken care of by the people, then it has a long way to, then it has its own sustainability. We see abuses here because there is a disconnect between the perception of people saying, expecting that the bureaucracy, urban infra has to be provided to me. Till such time we have that kind of a mindset, the infra will not grow. This is my infra and I have to take care of it. Similarly for water, and because we do landscapes and we face this challenge many a times, and we have to tread this fine line of greening spaces and facing with water challenges. So then we've involved and we promote more of native species, and our forestry plantations that we do across acres of land is not promoting exotic varieties or not promoting plants which need more water, but xeriscaping or trees for that matter, which only need to be taken care of in the initial 5 years of time. And then a tree takes care of itself, and it is nature. The dhamma of nature is to give. So if we take care of nature once, then it takes care of you forever. So that's where we stand, and I think it is very important. So I think it is good that you have to take this as a flag bearer and take this cause further, and it has to become a people's movement. Unfortunately, we have grown when we face adversity. Like we have expressed our best in COVID times. We have expressed, as in India, as a country, we have exhibited the best of the performance that we could, but we had a COVID to happen for that. And I don't think we need another kind of an adversity in urban infrastructure collapse for us to grow and then show the best of ourselves and to climb up. So my that is only my apprehension and my fear. But there are gloom days also, along with doom, as we say. The low carbon technology is coming up. The solar tariffs are crashing down. We are so there is a lot of good things happening in the green space, which is going to benefit the society as a whole.
I just wanted to talk about the importance of media when it comes to these things, because somehow we are very focused towards the metro cities, the big four or big five. There's so much wonderful stuff happening in the smaller cities in India. I mean, look at Dew, the cycling infrastructure that's coming over there. Indore, the wonderful example that we saw about. Bhopal also has some amazing infrastructure, cycling related, transportation related. Ambala has this newly created solid waste management system that has happened through a public-private partnership. So there is a lot happening in our country, which is at a very small scale, and the spotlight isn't going there. So we just imagine that everything is kind of crumbling and ruining, and the Bombay's flooding means entire India has horrendous stormwater drainage, but that's not true. So I think the focus needs to, we need to focus on other cities where good work is being done. So at least, those guys, people who are working over there get the encouragement, and then that sort of moves up into, filters upwards. So a trickle down effect, it's more like a spotlighting upwards effect. That's what I was talking about. And yeah, I agree with the water management and the water points that Nilesh spoke about. I think very, very important, very essential.
Direction towards impact of redefining urban infrastructure on prevailing socioeconomics. Does redefinition of urban infrastructure means government should provide better options to our population needs, or adopt proper functioning of existing infrastructure?
I think what I was saying was the answer is there in the question itself. Yes, forming committees which include field experts, which include people from different professions to come together, citizen groups and everyone to come together and then be involved in the decision and the design process is essential. And that's one very good way of dealing with the problems and the shortfalls of our infrastructure. And of course, more people are involved, more jobs will be created. So that way there is an economic benefit to decentralizing this process of infrastructure development. There is also, in terms of livability, what Nilesh, I think, kind of hinted at, the better infrastructure, the better quality of life, the more livable a city becomes. The best cities in the world that we talk about when we look at Scandinavian examples, it's all about giving everyone excellent access to infrastructure. And that's what it kind of comes down to. You should be able to go to your waterfront and enjoy it, right? And in Ahmedabad, they've created a committee, an SPV is what they call, special purpose vehicle. So that consists of citizens, consists of politicians, consists of municipalities, professionals who are part of a selected group who streamline the decision-making process and have helped development happen at a much faster, swifter pace. So yes, getting more people involved is the answer.
Amol Desh, I want to know, how does the urban planners are looking at the technologies, especially innovative technologies like geofarm or fast construction, rapid construction technologies available?
I think construction techniques overall, the construction industry is trying to diversify the various materials that are being used. So I think that is a space where a lot of innovation is needed. I don't think enough innovation has happened, and also bringing that innovation from a cost compatibility point of view to be able to scale is going to take a while. But I think in new construction materials and techniques are going to be very important from the perspective of climate mitigation in the kind of air pollution impact that it has, and so on, greenhouse gas emissions impact. So I think looking at how we make construction much more green and how we make materials much more green are going to be important.
Using technology as a tool to achieve what we want rather than the other way, using the limitations of technology to not achieve what we want, is where a lot of times the problems happen. And there is technology, there are innovative solutions around the world, and then sometimes it becomes okay if we use something like a geofoam or something, it might be expensive, so we might have to import it, so let's not do it. But then there are local solutions to a certain problem, and then you want to go, if you want to ape what Europe is doing and bring that here, then obviously it's not the answer. So I think there is enough technology these days. There's AI, there's BIM, there are softwares which do the whole thing. There are softwares which map circulation of vehicles, transportation, and then which give you the results. So it's about using that for your benefit, for the city's benefit.
Yes.
I would like to add another aspect which may not be directly concerning the entire discussion which is happening just now, which is that, I mean, our cities lack focus on O&M facilities, O&M of facilities that we have, already constructed or which has been provided to cities at whatever level. So when this operation and maintenance is missing and the standards are getting deteriorated, whatsoever we may construct as an infrastructure or a place for people, it could be anything, unless that is and it could even be restoration of a building. So we have done a pilot project in whatsoever scale or capacity it may be. If it is not properly operated and maintained, which normally our cities are going through that, we get very excited, we build something, we create something for the people, we also involve people's participation. But somewhere down the line, if this O&M doesn't happen properly, the deterioration happens very fast, and then over a period of time we forget about it, and it also becomes another thing which is lost with time. So that should be taken care, whether it is talking about roads, whether it is sewage or any kind of urban infrastructure network, whether it is any built or unbuilt space, whether it is a leisure space. So that O&M should be an integral part of the entire approach. So we should attempt everything with a very focused and integrated approach.
So, Shruti, what you exhibited was like exactly nailed it, because one thing is something we all need to, which we neglect or oversee, is the O&M cycle of a product or a facility.
The density of population for most of the cities are very high. How will the pandemic redraft the approach we have towards redefining urban infrastructure?
This COVID has definitely taught us that cities have to manage with fewer resources. It is very clear, and we all have gone through it already. So less is more is going to be the new trend. And of course, not even India, all over the world, there is, health crisis. There is issues of budgets are really going very less, and there is also social unrest among certain group of people. So all that has to be managed when we have a very integrated approach towards whatever resources we have, and that is how the resources should be shared within the urban scenario, as well as it can go to semi-urban areas and even rural areas. Rural areas did not go through this problem to this extent because they have been living in very sustainable way. So unless our way of living becomes sustainable in urban areas, this is going to be a problem which is going to persist forever. So our entire approach, and it is very important to understand what sustainability is. So sustainability starts right from the moment we think of any project, whether it is built, unbuilt, infrastructure project, or even it could be a project of creating a satellite town. So that aspect of sustainability has to start from the scratch. It is not only to achieve some kind of star rating or to get a certification, but the entire design approach right from the level of client to involving public participation if the project is of that nature. And the consultant, the designers have to be really aware and make our resources very, very used in very optimized way, and that will give a way forward, whether it is pandemic situation. I mean, as we are seeing, lot of cities all across are going through major fires, jungle fire or whatsoever. So these issues are really concerning, and if we are not able to really take control or take care of all this situation, it's going to be even more chaotic in coming years.
Nilesh was mentioning that work from home will be a new norm. And of course, the facilities required for people to work from home will also bring a lot of transformation in the infrastructure available for residential areas.
The shift in work from home, I think, will definitely uh, impact the real estate market, but will also begin to make neighborhoods much more sort of closed and complete. And when I say closed and complete, I mean we'll see neighborhoods, we'll see citizens demanding a lot of services that they traveled long distances for, now sort of being demanded at the very local and neighborhood level. So hopefully, what we might be able to see is neighborhoods becoming much more, uh, complete with amenities. We'll also see sort of increase in tourism from the perspective of working from home. But all of this, I think, remains to be seen. These are very early projections, and I think we'll have to wait for about 2 years to see where these trends land. Another shift that we'll see is in supply chains will readjust itself as we see a lot of services and infrastructure going actually digital. A lot of businesses and their value chains will change, and that will also have an impact on commercial real estate as well as sort of storehouse type of real estate. So we'll also see that type of change. Um, and thirdly, I think what I'd like to say is with the pandemic, we're definitely seeing sort of public awareness on public health and making sort of establishing correlation between public health and urban planning. And within the government itself, I think there's a greater realization about the impact of park and air pollution and amenities like that and the role that they play in improving our health outcomes. So that is actually that has actually been a sort of great impact that the pandemic has had on our understanding of our city's work. And lastly, I think looking at the migrant crisis that we saw, I think there's definitely going to be a greater demand for social protection for low-income groups, especially for migrants. The way I don't want to go into details of this, but there's something called a CEF fund that is collected from construction projects that is held at the state level, and this is basically used as social protection for migrant workers, especially in the construction sector when they have certain have injuries and so on. But how that money gets spent needs to be thought through, needs to probably be decentralized as well. So I think in raising the floor for social protection is something that will have to be demanded much more fiercely going forward.
When we are talking about working from home, work from home can happen only to some extent, because somewhere we are like humans are, social beings. They need to meet, interact, and that is the warmth they require to keep moving ahead in life. Here I would say that of course there'll be a trend to create a local lifestyle within that urban neighborhood concept, or sustainable way of doing things, that each community has every facility within their own setup, which is something very nice, and it will create less load on urban infrastructure. But at the same time, the cities should be planned, or their areas should be planned in such a way that they include shorter commute times. So that is going to be the main thrust, that people don't have to travel very long. So this is going to be, I think, a more emerging trend within the urban areas. And this will also ensure, or require rather, that cities are safer for cycling. So because if we are looking at shorter commute times, we are looking for very safe ways for cyclists and pedestrians, so that actually those neighborhoods are sustainable and the commute time is reduced, and our urban infrastructure is less loaded with so many people traveling from here to there. And of course, public transport is a major issue, but definitely with COVID, we saw a very different kind of shift. But of course, this is not going to, I hope this doesn't last long, and public transport becomes, remains as relevant as it is.
What I find amazing is everyone's thinking on the same track. Everyone's, the focus is decentralizing, get more people involved in design, use technology as a tool. With COVID, it's proven that we need more access, have more parks in the city, have shorter commute times, distribute access to infrastructure to everyone in different parts, rather than having 7 sewage treatment plants. You can have 35 smaller ones, so that you decentralize the load and you distribute it and get everyone to work better. I think more people like us, India is in a better place in the future.
Thank you, panelists, for exchanging your valuable thoughts on today's topic, redefining urban infrastructure and addressing the new age challenges. Delegates, we hope you enjoyed it. Before wrapping up today's session, we would like to thank our distinguished panelists, Shruti Purohit, Arijit Singh, Jinal Chawla, and Mr. Nilesh Gandhi. I would also like to thank my editor, Mr. Prasad Nair, for taking this initiative. Thanks to all the delegates and viewers. So with this, we would like to announce the closing of today's session. Request you to stay tuned for more such sessions. Thank you and goodbye.